Hello folks, hope you're having a good day today. In today's video, we're going over the urinary tract infection. We're going to go over the offense the bacteria puts on the urinary tract. We'll go over the defenses the body had in place, both physical and chemical. And then we'll go over the counterattack, the activation of the innate and adaptive immune system. Okay? I thought UTIs would be fun to cover since they're pretty common. Hell, even your pets can get them. So I thought it would be cool to explore the physiology that's going on here. Okay? So without further ado, there's my notes, and let's get after it. All right, so allow me to introduce you to the pathogen here. Whoops. Our pathogen is E. coli. Most UTI is caused by E. coli. This is a bacteria that originates from the gut. Okay, so bacteria make their way from perineum to urethra. All right, so basically these bacteria are bridging the gap from anus to genitalia. Unfortunate. So what are some contributing factors here? Poor hygiene can certainly be one of them. Doesn't need to be, but considering what I just said, you could see that being the case. Having a short urethra is certainly an increased risk. These bacteria like to stay in the bladder. To get to the bladder, we need to travel through the urethra. In females, the urethra is much shorter than it is in males, so higher incidence in females. And then sexual activity will certainly be a contributing factor here. If we increase the activity in the area, we might facilitate the spread of things. Moving on. So E. coli that infects urinary tract is dubbed uropathogenic E. coli, or UPEC. If you look up any scientific papers or stuff on UTIs, you'll probably see that term used. Okay, so now the E. coli has made its way into the urinary tract. What does it do now? So it needs to adhere. It needs to make sure it stays there. That's where it wanted to go. I need to make sure I stay there. So these E. coli use Fimbriae and pili to adhere to the urothelium, the epithelium of the urinary tract. So Fimbriae and pili are basically like little hands, little arms that these bacteria are going to put out to grab onto the urinary tract epithelium and stay there. And this is important because once they're adhered, the flow of urine is no longer able to flush them out. Okay, that was one of the innate defenses that this system had. But once adherence occurs, urine flow is not strong enough. So now that I'm adhered, what do? Well, I'm going to do what bacteria do. They make more of themselves. They're going to multiply via binary fission. So after that adhesion, we multiply. And now that there's more of us, we're forming a colony. These bacteria colonies typically form a biofilm, basically just a protective capsule surrounding the colony. Okay, so this protects the colony from antibiotics and immune responses. Not good. If this biofilm is robust enough, then this could cause a persistent infection that's resisting antibiotics, resisting immune responses. And we'll see with every infection, we don't want it to be persistent. We need to get rid of it as quick as possible. The longer it's in our body, the more damage it can inflict, as we'll see with these next couple steps. So these bacteria, these E. coli, can invade bladder epithelium, epithelial invasion. When they get inside the epithelia, they can form IBRs, intracellular bacterial reservoirs. Pretty sneaky. So they've snuck into the very cells of the bladder itself, which allows for immune evasion. Okay, remember, my immune system's name, the name of the game of the immune system is determining self from non-self. My bladder cells are most certainly part of me, but these bacteria have taken up shop within the bladder cells. So the immune system can get, what am I trying to say? It can get tricked. It can get Scooby-Dooed into thinking that there's no bacteria around, but they're hiding within the cells themselves. So very sneaky. The immune system has ways around this, but for the bacteria to do this is extremely sneaky. Okay, so let's say the biofilm is working really well. We got a bunch of IBRs, so even if the biofilm doesn't work, they've got backups within our very own bladder cells. Then we can have ascent. So if untreated, if this infection is super persistent, then the UPEC can ascend the ureters and infect the kidney. So going from bladder to ureter to kidney. And an infected kidney or an inflamed kidney, we call pyelonephritis. Okay? That's not comfortable, as you could probably imagine. And even worse, if these bacterial colonies get to the nephrons, remember that the kidney is a major blood pressure regulating organ. It gets about 1/5 of cardiac output. So we got a lot of blood going there. And if these colonies are spreading like wildfire, maybe they get into the blood, and then I have bacteria in my blood, and that's sepsis. That is very, very bad. Urosepsis is just sepsis that came from the urinary tract, obviously. Okay? Yeah, bacteria in the bloodstream, really, really, really bad. So we don't want it to get this far, of course. Now, I must say, most UTIs do not get to this phase, right? We're not getting kidney inflammation or sepsis on typical UTIs. This is worst case scenario. But just walking you through the physiology, that could happen if very, very untreated. All right, now we can get into the defenses. So we already touched on this a little bit. In our physical barriers, we have flushing. Okay, so regular urination is going to wash away pathogens before they can adhere. Very helpful. And if you've ever seen someone have one or had a UTI yourself, you go to the bathroom a lot. I'm not sure if it's just the inflammation down there, the stimulation of the cells down there, whatever it may be, you got to pee a lot. But that's a good thing, because you might already have an infection, but since you are urinating a lot, you're using this flushing mechanism like mad. So you're decreasing the bacterial load within that can adhere the more you're peeing. Maybe that's why the body has us do it. Okay. And then we have the urothelial layer, just the epithelium of the urinary tract. Tight junctions are going to be in place. That's no different from anywhere in the body. We just want to make sure that that epithelium is tight and things aren't getting past the layer that we don't want. So that's very helpful. And then we also have mucins on the apical surface. These are just glycoproteins that can help trap bacteria. So just basically clumps of mucus that we can surround the bacteria with. This immobilizes them, slows them down, facilitates their clearance. Okay? So those are those physical barriers in place. And then my chemical barriers. So urine is extremely acidic. That's a pretty common scientific fact. The pH is very, very low. High hydrogen ion concentration. Unfavorable conditions for bacteria. So the very nature of urine is not ideal for these bacteria. And then urea. So we are excreting this urine. Our body doesn't want it. We are urinating it out. This is the nitrogenous waste component of urine, urea. This waste can disrupt those bacterial membranes and impair adhesion. So just the very composition of urine is not ideal for bacteria. Not sure why the E. coli want to get up there so bad. And then just like many other epithelia within the body, we have defensins and cathelicidins that are secreted in response to infections. So these are just antimicrobial peptides that can disrupt bacterial membranes. These are very, very common. We're going to see these throughout the course many times. And then while I was doing research for this lecture, I found this cool compound called uromodulin. It's a compound actually secreted by renal tubules that bind to the pili and fimbriae of E. coli. And these little hands, these arms are what they use to adhere. So if these are bound, they can't adhere anymore. So this prevents adhesion. So that's a pretty cool compound that I had actually never heard before doing research for this lecture. So pretty cool. Next up is the counterattack. This is my favorite part. Okay, so now we got to bring in our help. We got to bring in the big guns. So we have our innate immune system first. Okay, this is just our non-specific. We know something's wrong. We got to get some defenses in here. So pattern recognition receptors on my uroepithelial cells have determined that there's bacteria in the tract. We don't want that. Okay, so these PRRs have determined, I don't know, maybe they saw a fimbriae, a pili, or just a chunk of bacterial membrane, and they start secreting cytokines and producing antimicrobial peptides. We got the signal that something's in here that we don't want, so we start going, hey, help me, how, hey, get those peptides, get those cytokines, and those cytokines are going to start recruiting some of the big guys, some of our neutrophils, okay, our first responders. Now we can get some defenses going, some counterattack. Neutrophils come in, first responders to infection, our EMTs, okay, from blood to bladder via that extravasation process that we talked on. And once they get to the site of infection, we're going to release a bunch of those nets, those neutrophil extracellular traps, and we're going to phagocytize any bacteria that we come across. Okay, so just doing neutrophil things here. Next up is our macrophages and our dendritic cells. These are going to do the same thing. They're going to engulf pathogens and then present antigens to nearby lymphocytes and nearby lymph nodes. Okay? Very, very crucial. This is what gets us into the adaptive arm of the immune system. These macrophages and dendritic cells phagocytize these E. coli, put a chunk of them on their membrane, and then go recruit the T cells and B cells that are meant to fight E. coli. But real quick, I'll mention NK cells. Remember, these guys can target and destroy epithelial cells that they deem to be infected. So these cells that have these bacterial reserves, they might have some telltale signs of that on their membrane that the NK cell can detect and then administer apoptosis signals. Okay, but back to these guys, they have now talked to the lymphocytes in our lymph nodes and have activated our adaptive immune cells. Okay, so first we'll talk about the T cells. The T helper cell secretes cytokines that amplify the immune response. Okay, very, very important. They amplify our neutrophil and macrophages, bringing more to the area. Remember, these cytokines are how they communicate. So these T helper cells are basically just conductors, making sure all the right players get to where they need to go. They also tell the other T cells right here, these cytotoxic T cells, what to do as well. These cytotoxic T cells can target and kill epithelial cells, so our own cells that are harboring these intracellular bacterial reservoirs. Okay, so these cytotoxic T cells are very face-to-face. They're called like cell-to-cell mediated toxicity. They go right for the cells involved. They're not secreting antibodies or compounds to do their work. They go right to the target, secrete perforins and granzymes, some harmful chemicals on it, and get rid of it itself. Cell-to-cell death, or cell-to-cell targeting, pardon. And then finally, my B cells. My B cells are going to get activated as well. And an activated B cell is a plasma cell. Okay? And a plasma cell is an antibody factory. Okay? So these antigen-presenting cells, these macrophages and dendritic cells, have brought the pathogen to my B cell in this case. It's now activated. It's a plasma cell. Now it's making antibodies that are meant to bind to E. coli. Okay? So I'm secreting these IgAs into the bladder mucosa, and now these IgAs are going to bind to the bacteria, neutralizing it. I got a big old antibody on the membrane of the bacteria now, so binding, so that bacteria can't bind to the urothelium as easily. So it's neutralized. And not only that, if a compound has an antibody attached to it, that's just a body-wide signal that thing needs to go, right? My adaptive immune system has dubbed you as an invader. You need to get out of here. So it facilitates the clearance of these bacteria once they are tagged with one of these antibodies. Okay? All right. That's basically everything. We went through how the E. coli, these uropathogenic E. coli, infect the urinary tract. We went through the defenses that we had, these chemical and physical barriers. And then we went through the different cells and properties of the innate and adaptive immune system. Okay, so that's how we go through a urinary tract infection that hopefully doesn't get all the way up to the kidneys. And then just a quick side note, cranberry juice can actually help. I've seen this all over the place. It helps prevent adhesion, or it's been shown to. Maybe we need more research done on the front, but that's been one of the colloquial ways to prevent UTIs, because it's been shown to maybe prevent adhesion of those bacteria on the urothelium. But yeah, that's UTIs. Any questions? Shoot me a message. Hope it wasn't too much for you. Have an excellent day. Thank you for your attention.